What if I told you that every fever, every emotional breakdown, and every dark night of the soul wasn't an indication that something was wrong, but that something was actually being made right? I want you to think about that scene in The Matrix when Neo takes that red pill and he wakes up in the real world, and the first thing that happens is that he stumbles around, he throws up, he passes out and goes into shock. But Morpheus tells him that that was because of the fact that he'd never used his muscles before. So he wasn't actually getting worse, he was actually getting better, and he was actually awakening. What I want to say in this video is that the same exact thing applies to our spiritual awakening. That applies to the idea of physical sickness and wellness. You see, when we think that we're actually getting sick, in actuality, we're actually getting better. And so what I want to discuss in this video is how physical sickness and spiritual awakening are very similar. And that when we come to understand that what we think of as sickness is actually us getting better, it will actually shed some light on what you're going through in your spiritual awakening. If you want to find out more, stick around. Hi, my name is Jose De Castro, and I help spiritual entrepreneurs get unstuck by helping them to reconnect to their true authentic selves. So first of all, I want to talk about the myth in our current society about getting sick. So when you think about the idea of getting sick, you think of yourself coming down with flu symptoms, maybe running a high fever, coughing, runny noses, body aches and pains, not having an appetite, and you think that you have gotten sick. And this is because of the fact that our modern allopathic medical system is so backwards that it actually sort of prizes the idea of feeling well at the expense of our ability to actually get rid of the things in our bodies that are causing us to be sick. So let me just break it down this way. When we think we are getting sick, we are not actually getting sick. In fact, in actuality, we were already sick. In other words, we already had the conditions within our bodies that made for the idea of poor health. And when we run a fever, when we get sick, as it were, in actuality, what's happening here is our body is initiating a cleanup. So think of the idea of a fever. A fever raises your temperature to burn off things that no longer serve you. Think about a runny nose. Think about a cough. These are all the body's pathways for expelling toxins. You see, what happens is that we think that as we're going along and we're feeling okay, that everything is fine just because we're not feeling discomfort. So what happens? We start getting sick, as it were, right? We feel the temperature rise. What do we end up trying to do? What does the allopathic care system encourage us to do? To buy drugs, Tylenol, or take some prescription to suppress the body's mechanism for expelling the toxins that actually are the culprits for making us sick in the first place. Just because we didn't feel discomfort before didn't mean that we were well. And that is a really, really important thing to understand. It really is. It is the toxins that are coming in through our food, through our air, through repressed emotions, through all of the negativity in our environment, both physically, emotionally, psychically, that is really the cause for what no longer serves us, that is lodging itself in our body. And then we think that the body is somehow stupid and unable to deal with life, and therefore it just breaks down, and that's when we feel like we encounter sickness. But if we only knew about the intelligence of the body, the deep intelligence of nature that has made our bodies, that has created our bodies in such a way where it gives us a method, it gives us a pathway whereby we can actually expel the things that no longer serve us, then we would treat the idea of sickness in a different way. Instead of saying that we got sick, we would say that we are getting well. Now, the reason I'm bringing up all of this is because I want to link this idea of the misunderstanding of physical illness to the misunderstandings that crop up around the idea of spiritual awakening and spiritual healing. Because we automatically start thinking that if we pursue a path of spirituality, it means that we're going to feel great. It means that we're going to feel love and light, and we're going to feel joy and happiness. We're going to equate that with the pharmaceutical commercials where people are running through meadows in slow motion, right? In actuality, what is actually happening when we start down the road of spiritual awakening and spiritual healing is that things don't end up feeling great. We don't feel love and light and happiness and joy all the time on a spiritual journey. When we are actually awakening and when we're actually healing spiritually, what that ends up looking like is quite the opposite of what we think. It's actually the breakdown of certain systems in our lives that no longer serve us. It's actually the breakdown of certain relationships in our lives that no longer serve our highest ideals. It's actually emotional purging that ends up happening. Sometimes you feel like you want to cry. Sometimes you feel like you're going through a really bad day out of nowhere and you have no idea why that is. So let's apply some of the idea of understanding real physical health and equating that and tying it in to the idea of spiritual awakening and spiritual healing. You see, in actuality, when we go through life, we encounter circumstances and situations that cause us to feel badly, that cause us emotional hurt, right? We go through loss. We go through all kinds of circumstances that hurt us. But what we end up doing so that we can cope with these things is we end up repressing them. We end up trying to forget about them and pushing them down. And we end up really repressing some of these emotional patterns into a place where we no longer have to deal with them consciously. But what happens as a result of that over time is that the more we push down upon the negative things that happen to us, the more that we try to forget about them, the more that we try to mask it with going out and having fun or watching TV or turning on Netflix or keeping noise going in our reality and in our environment constantly so that we don't have to actually sit down with the unpleasantries of what we're dealing with. The more we do that, the more we actually lodge these negative emotions within our energetic body. And so when we actually end up embarking upon a path of spiritual growth, a path of spiritual healing, what ends up having to happen is just like with the sickness, all of the toxins that have lodged in your body are now actually coming up to be purged. You don't want to take a Tylenol when you're dealing with sickness because that is basically masking symptoms. It's like the idea of when you're driving your car and something's wrong, you see a light coming on, an indicator light saying that something is wrong. The allopathic care system would have you take that light and break it off and throw it away so you don't have to look at it. But in actuality, you want to actually acknowledge the fact that something is happening and that you actually have to deal with it from its root. That's the same thing with spiritual healing. All of these negative emotions that we've been repressing over the years, when we are going through a spiritual detox, when we're going through spiritual healing, they have to surface again. The only way that we can actually expel these things is by allowing them to resurface and actually allowing them to be there. I don't know if you've ever heard of the saying, you have to feel it in order to heal it. Well, this is exactly what it means. It means that if you want to create space within yourself for more true joy and true lasting happiness, then you have to allow those negative emotions that you've repressed over the years to be acknowledged, to be fully felt, so that when you fully feel it, you will allow it to pass through you and therefore create that space. So I really want you to understand how this works, because next time you feel depressed, next time you feel like you're going through something that is so hard and difficult, next time you're feeling those negative emotions coming up, the last thing that you want to do is try to run away. The last thing you want to do is try to repress it back into the unconscious mind. What I want you to do instead is this. Don't take the psychic Tylenol, okay? You don't want to try to forget about it. You don't want to try to mask it. What you want to do is you want to look towards it. You want it to be there. You want it to actually allow itself to surface in your consciousness. You see, what happens is that these feelings will arise in your body. They're going to be arising firstly within your body before there is actually a story attached to them. But if you can actually be very present with yourself, you'll realize something. You'll realize that the feeling comes first, and you'll realize that then the mind tries to attach a story to it to make sense of it. And then we end up getting lost in the stories, and then we perpetuate the negative feeling. So what you want to do is you want to break that loop. You want to break that cycle, and this is the way that you do it. When you feel that feeling of fear, that feeling of discomfort, of sadness, of depression, whatever it is, when you feel it starting to arise in your body, start to try to pinpoint how that shows up for you. What is the literal feeling that you're feeling in the body? Where do you feel it? What is the sensation? Could you give it a color, a texture? Can you really get into it? Can you get granular and really give it your attention? And what I want you to do next is I want you to notice how your mind is going to start weaving a story around it. And when the mind does that, I want you to create space between you and your thoughts. And instead of identifying with those thoughts and saying that I am feeling this, I want you to also understand that thoughts are not you, just like the feelings are not you, right? When you can do that, then you can create space and you can notice the feeling, and then you can notice the thoughts. And then what you want to do is you want to give the thoughts and the feelings your full attention. Allow them to be there without judging yourself, without making yourself to be bad, without saying, I can't feel this way because men don't cry, or whatever the case may be. And that's the other thing. If you feel like you need to cry, if you feel like the negative thoughts and emotions that are coming up within you are causing you to want to release in some sort of way, whether it's through shouting, pounding a pillow, engaging in some sort of physical activity that doesn't hurt somebody, crying, these are all healthy outlets. These are all ways that you can discharge that energy without allowing it to fester within your subtle body, your emotional and your psychic body. So it is a totally different way of looking at negative emotion in your life. When you start looking at it this way, not only can you heal faster physically, but you can also ascend and evolve faster spiritually and emotionally and psychologically, because you're not pushing down on the thing that is trying to leave you. So it's really, really important, guys, to start realizing that the allopathic care system has been lying to us for more than 100 years to sell us products to keep repressing our symptoms so that they can keep selling us more products as we keep repressing the same symptoms that are trying to leave us, and as they are able to make money on trying to help us repress those things indefinitely so that we can always be a perpetual customer. When you can understand that and you take that and you apply it to your spiritual, psychological, and emotional life, then it's a game changer. because you realize that when things surface for you, symptoms as it were, like a fever of the soul or of the mind or of the emotions, then you're not going to try to run away or escape it. You want to do the thing that will allow it to leave you faster. And that is acknowledging it, observing it without any judgment whatsoever. And in so doing, it will pass through you that much quicker. Remember, cry if you need to cry. Discharge the emotion in such a way that it doesn't hurt someone else. Because the more that you push down on it, then you go through what's called chronic stress. You experience this chronic sense of stress, which is basically just the fact that all of this stuff is in you like a pressure cooker, and there's only a little bit of release. Every time you feel that chronic stress, there's just that little tiny release of that steam. But if you really want to heal, guys, you want to open the valve fully and let it out. Acknowledge it, notice it, observe it. Don't judge it. Don't judge yourself. Let it be. And in letting it be, you will heal that much quicker. I want to share my own circumstance that I'm going through right now with you that illustrates this same premise or this same sort of idea. I've been doing a form of yoga called Kriya Yoga, which in meditation, I move a lot of energy through my nervous system and through my spine through what's called spinal breathing. And the more that I move that energy or that prana through myself, it actually ends up having the effect of finding those pockets of negative stuck energy that I've been holding for decades and causing them to come up into my awareness very quickly. What that looks like for me is that randomly out of the blue, I might start feeling a sense of heavy anxiety within my chest or some emotional release valve that is just opening up, and I might feel really negative, feel really down, feel depressed. All of the ways that I used to feel way back when, before I started upon my spiritual journey years and years ago. But now what I'm encountering is the release of the energy that has been stuck there for a long time, ancient energy that is within my system that's coming up. But what happens is that sometimes it ends up trying to drag me into a story. And sometimes I get pulled into the story. I have to admit, I get pulled into the story. And I start feeling those old patterns that have been around for a long time that I thought I healed from. But in my moments of more clarity, I'm realizing more and more and more that these are actually pockets of stuck energy that are trying to be, what's the word? They're trying to be acknowledged. And in being acknowledged, they can finally say, okay, I don't need to be here anymore and I can leave. And every time I allow myself that space and that grace to go through these things, the more it's able to leave me quicker, and it leaves me feeling more expanded. It leaves me feeling more peaceful. It leaves me feeling more optimistic. And so I have really come to rebrand physical sickness and emotional and spiritual unpleasantness as something positive, something that is actually happening for me instead of to me. But what ends up happening is because so many of us buy into the lies that the allopathic care system has been telling us, and pop spirituality and good feelings and good vibes always has been telling us. When we start uncovering the lies and uncovering the fact that these are not the way to actual healing, but the way to healing is through the unpleasantness, it will be a game changer for you. And so I just want to encourage everybody, just like Neo, Once you take that red pill, my friend, you might end up on the ground, on your knees, throwing up emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, feeling down, feeling depressed. But it's not an indication that something is wrong. It's an indication that something is working. It's an indication that this intelligence of your body and of your soul is allowing you the grace of being able to purge through years of stuckness, years of repressed energy, perhaps even lifetimes. Because maybe in this incarnation, you are just ripe to be able to deal with all of the lifetimes of repression, all of the lifetimes of pushing it down, of looking the other way. And so if you are currently feeling that negative emotion, that depression, that dark night of the soul, that feeling like, what is happening here? I thought I was on a spiritual path. Why do I feel like crap? If you're going through that, my friend, I'm telling you something. You are where you want to be. This is the place where you are being allowed to face the things that need to be faced, acknowledge the feelings that need to be felt in order to clear them out. And when you clear them out, my friend, the space that will be left will allow it for you to be able to be a container, to hold space for others, to be able to hold space for yourself, to be that much more spiritually mature, to be able to move into the next phase of your spiritual growth and evolution. So don't push it away. If you're experiencing that dark night of the soul, don't make it your enemy. Sit with it. Use the mantra, I can sit with this. Even if you don't like it, even if it doesn't feel good, just in your times of clarity, even if you may get caught up in the stories sometimes, just come back around. Just say, you know what? This is happening for me. I can sit with this. Cry it out. Do what you have to do, but don't run from it any longer. You will be better for it. Trust me. I hope this helps. And if you got any value from this video, please, by all means, hit the like button, subscribe for more of this type of content. And by all means, if you feel like you'd like to book a coaching session with me, we can book a free 15-minute discovery call. The link is in the description below. It's absolutely free, and we can just chat, and you get to see if my coaching is a right fit for you. No obligations, up to you. I hope this helps, my friend, and drop a comment. Are you going through a dark night of the soul? Tell me, do you find this helpful? Have you thought of any of the things that I've mentioned in this video? Do you have any other questions for me? Do you have any insights that you want to share with us? Let's start a conversation. Anyhow, hope this helps. I'll catch you in the next video. Hey friend, thanks for sticking around this long. If you got any value from this, then maybe this video is something that you might find helpful. Here's a playlist for you, and by all means, subscribe for more content.